Sorry, my wife asked for the link. I think she wants to go to sleep. Hey, Monty.
Hi.
Now there are three
tell
of you,
Lena-
Eric.
Matt, tell Lena that's a nice sign she did.
There's only one me, so can you demote anything else there? I'd like to think I could be in more than one place at a time, but I can't, so just here.
Can you do that, Ann, as host?
I'm gonna try.
It's like 3 Eric Goulets.
It's like
Really?
the Zoom version of multiplicity.
Oh, yeah, look at that.
Okay, panelists are starting to attend.
Yeah, wow, 49. 51.
We'll give this a few minutes.
I'm hoping for some good discussion tonight. As much as I enjoyed the Stonewall one, we all agreed a lot, which is good. But looking for some good debate.
Making me nervous, Henry.
I'm also proud to say that I'm the only candidate who took an AP test this morning. So that's the thing that you look for in a candidate. I'm glad.
What subject?
AP Environmental Science.
Very cool.
Wish I could say government, but that was yesterday.
Well, I hope you did well. Wow, back to back. Good
Yeah.
for you.
Okay, now we have Deirdre.
Deirdre. But I don't see Eric.
We lost Eric now. Eric, the man of multiple screens.
Hey, Deidre.
Well, it looks like Claire Block has been, like maybe she was one of the Erics.
Three more minutes and we'll start.
Oh, Eric's back. All right, well, is it time?
Let's begin. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to our candidates. Welcome to the audience. This is the Ward 3 City Council Democratic Candidates Forum. My name is Robert Gordon. I'm the president of the Chevy Chase Citizens Association. I want to thank our co-sponsor, the Palisades Community Association. And I'd like to thank Spence Spencer of the PCA. He's worked tirelessly to help organize this event and is my host and moderator. I would also like to thank our timekeeper, Anna Rand, who is the PCA's administrator. With that, I'd like to turn this over to Spence, who's going to discuss the rules of the road.
Yeah, and again, it's really fantastic to see such a strong attendance here tonight. And we hope we can help all of us here in Ward 3 choose the best candidate that can represent our neighborhoods and the ward at large. And I want to run through the rules of this event super briefly. Just to sum up, there are two rules, really. Be civil and be short. We have no time and everybody has to be nice to each other. I will say that this is not a debate, but it's a forum, and that means it's civil and it's an opportunity to get to know the candidates for all the others who are here. We're going to have an opening statement that'll be 1.5 minutes. Following that, we're going to be asking a series of questions. Now, Robert and I have gone out on our various neighborhood listservs and solicited questions. I, for one, will say that I got about 16, and we really don't have the space to even ask 16 questions with a forum of this size. I was super grateful for all the support for that. But we're going to run through each question. Robert and I are going to alternate, and it's going to be 1 minute to respond from there. Moderators are the only ones permitted to ask questions. We will add an audience question that will be selected by Mr. Gordon at the end, mainly because of time constraints. But I want to introduce you to Ann Aran and our amazing high-tech timing device. And when you are immediately going to start speaking, you get the green card. Ta-da! When you have 20 seconds left, amber. And then finally red for a dead stop. And we really ask you to keep your comments down to 1 minute. Please do not interrupt. Your mics are all on. Please do not interrupt each other. And of course, Robert and I, as the moderators, we're also the enforcers. So that's the best title of them all. I want to say we're going to start with opening statements right now, and let's start with Ben Bergman.
Great. Good evening, everybody. My name is Ben Bergman. I'm an attorney. I'm a former public school teacher. I taught 5th grade social studies, and I'm a dad of 2 small kids, 5 and 2. I'm also an ANC commissioner, the chair of ANC 3D, and if you've come to any of these forums before, you know I'm the first in the alphabet, so I usually go first. I decided to run for council for really 2 reasons. 2, I think, big systemic problems that have been holding our city back. One is an accountability problem. I think we have a huge problem on the council of leaders who are timid when it comes to oversight, who are wary of new ideas, of big things, and really just pull their punches, even when there's incompetence or corruption from agency heads who play critical roles in our lives, whose failures impact our kids, who impact our safety. It has to end. We have to have accountability, and that begins with having strong oversight. The other issue is affordability. This city is increasingly impossible for people who are trying to raise a family or people who are trying to age in place. It's increasingly impossible for them to afford to live here. And that's because of housing, and that's because of childcare, and that's because of transit. And we have got to figure out how to deal with that. Actually, we don't have to figure out. We know what to do. We have to get serious about it. We have to be open to big, transformative ideas, even if it means big changes, because that's the way you deal with big problems. Thank you so much.
Okay, and next up, Deirdre Brown. Deirdre, over to you.
Hello, my name is Deirdre Brown, running to be Ward 3 Council. And you can go to my website and read my bio, but tonight I just wanted to point out to you that as a parent of Ward 3 students, I have 5 kids. My 3 oldest daughters are adults, and they graduated from Ward 3 schools. And I have 2 kids who are still in middle school and high school. I understand what it means to be a parent in this day and age, to one, send adult kids off to college and then have them come back and not be able to afford housing, struggle to make ends meet, not be able to live in the ward. I also understand what it means to send kids off to schools during this time of COVID and post-COVID. We need a council member who can be active and proactive. We're working with the mayor and the city council on how we're funding out our schools, making sure that we eliminate this overcrowding problem and making sure that the buildings are maintained. When we start talking about housing, I have 22 years of housing experience, more than anyone on this panel. I own a title company where part of my job is also to help people get into affordable housing by using the programs available to them through the District of Columbia. I've been working with the DC Association of Realtors Public Policy Committee for the last 9 years, lobbying the City Council on housing issues, some of which affect some of our residents here in the ward. I am looking forward to having more conversation tonight about housing, so I'm sure that it will come up. And the last thing I want to say is, as a small business owner in the ward, I understand what it means for our small businesses to have survived COVID and now to try to thrive and move forward.
Okay, Deirdre, we're up. Okay, your time is up. Next up, Henry Cohen.
Hello, everybody. I'm Henry Cohen. As I like to introduce myself, I'm the high school kid in the race. Just because I'm young doesn't mean that I don't have valuable experience to the council. It doesn't mean that I'm not going to be a fighter for Ward 3. I'm a strong believer in a fully funded public education program. I'm a strong believer in fully funded public transportation. And I'm a strong believer in representation for everybody who wants it. That means students, that means historically disadvantaged communities of interest, and that means younger people. And finally, I want to say that Ward 3 is ready for change. Ward 3 is ready for a lifelong Democrat, a lifelong progressive who's ready to make some changes for the city and who's ready to shake up the status quo. And I'm happy to say that I'm ready from day one to fight for Ward 3. And I'm ready to fight for public transportation, for public schools, and for representation. Thank you very much.
All right, and next up, Tricia Duncan.
Thank you all. I'm delighted to be here. I am biased. This is going to be my favorite forum that we have done because I am such a lover of Palisades. For those who don't know me, before I jumped in the race, I was the president of the Palisades Community Association. I'm delighted that we're doing this with Chevy Chase. I see a lot of similarities in our village-like feel of both of our neighborhoods. I grew up in Arlington, Virginia, but I've lived in DC for over 20 years. I was the president of the PTO over at Key Elementary for 2 years. I have a 8th grader in middle school who goes to Hardy, and I have a senior who's graduating from the charter school basis downtown. I have been a big advocate for schools in the ward. I know all about the overcrowding of schools in Ward 3. I'm delighted we're going to be talking about the schools here in the neighborhood. I also know a lot about special education. I have a child on the spectrum, and I think that there's a lot we can do for that in the ward. I see the city growing. We're going to be a city with, 1 million people someday. So we need to think of different ways to move people around. So I'm glad we're also talking about transportation and housing, and I'm looking forward to a lively discussion.
All right, and next at bat, Bo Finley.
Thank you, and good evening, everybody. I was born in DC. I grew up attending Blessed Sacrament off Chevy Chase Circle. I later went to Georgetown Law. My wife and I live in Cleveland Park in an apartment complex called Quebec House, which I'm sure many of you know, where I've lived for the past 17 years. I've spent most of my career with the federal government, first as an auditor with the Inspector General's Office of the U.S. Department of Transportation. And then for the past 14 years, I served as an attorney with the Federal Communications Commission. Over the past 5 years of that, I served as senior cybersecurity attorney in the Public Safety and Homeland Security Bureau of the FCC, with a strong focus on 911 reliability. I'm currently the chair of ANC 3C and represent Cleveland Park. I'm running for a number of reasons. First is because I believe housing is a human right. We need affordable housing, not just in Ward 3, but across the district. I'm running because we need bold action on climate change. We need global warming's effects are already being felt across the district, and the impacts of climate change are in a district fall disproportionately on low-income and Black communities, which exacerbate inequality, and we must do our part. I'm also running because we must treat our low-income neighbors, including the unhoused and recently rehoused, with dignity. We need stronger wraparound services, and we need to support families who are experiencing housing insecurity. So I'd like you to join my campaign. My campaign is focused on basic human dignity. I believe we all deserve to be treated with dignity. What does that mean? It means that we should not have to fear whether we can afford to have a roof over our heads, whether we can afford to access healthcare. And it means working for a livable wage and a safe, fair workplace. So yeah, please join my campaign. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Bo. And next up, Matthew Freeman.
Thank you.
1 second. Sorry to destroy your karma here, but we need to let Eric Goulet into the chat.
Into the forum, I believe. That's what I was about to say.
I'm sorry. I meant to say, yeah, the Zoom, the forum.
Right. I don't see him on this list. I don't know how to let him back in.
Okay. I'll resend him a link.
I've been in touch with him. I'm gonna try to bring him up very soon.
Okay, excellent. All right, Matt, over to you. Sorry.
That's great. So I'm Matt Fruman. I'm running for this seat because I want to make the ward and city safer, more affordable, green, and an increasingly great place to raise a family, learn, and age in place. And that can all sound really ambitious, but I have worked on these issues for over 15 years, either as an A&C commissioner, chair of the board for the Lisner Home, president of the Tenleytown Main Streets Board, creating a citywide education advocacy organization, kickstarting the education advocacy organization here in Ward 3. I have a long record of tackling problems and getting things done. The way I do it is I like to listen to people, learn all the dimensions of an issue, try to come up with a solution that works for as many as possible, forge a coalition, and get it done. And on issue after issue, I've been able to do that. The most recent one that I'm really proud of, and it's just one in a long list, is the Lisner Home, where we are building a 93-unit senior affordable housing project on our campus. We came up with a proposal. Our neighbors didn't like it. We said, it's going to have to go basically where it is, and it's going to have to be about this size, but we'll listen to you on everything else. And we worked with them, and we came up with a solution that our neighbors supported. They broke the stereotype. They're Ward 3 residents, and they supported affordable housing in their backyard. And I'm proud of them, and I'm proud of us.
All righty then. And have we gotten any word from Eric yet? Have we sent an email? Have we forwarded the link?
Yeah, I forwarded the link. I don't see him coming up yet, though.
Okay, that's okay.
We can move along and then come back to him when he gets on.
Definitely. Okay. Next up, Monty Monash.
Hi, yes, thank you. So thanks for the opportunity. And I just wanted to give a little bit of background on me. I'm Monty Monash. I'm a native Washingtonian. I've lived in the ward for 21 years with my husband, and we have two boys, one in 7th grade that goes to a DCPS school down in the West End, and my other son is in an independent school. He's in the 3rd grade. And so from the perspective of a parent, I'm really excited about talking about our schools here in the district, what we're doing to identify new site locations, as well as to work on the issue of the overcrowding in our ward. And also bringing in charter schools in addition to our traditional public schools. I've owned a business for 15 years where I work with engineering companies and construction companies, and we do infrastructure projects throughout the city and the region. So we've worked on everything from the transportation side of things, water, wastewater, through to the tunnels that are going into the city and the power line undergrounding. So that gives me a lot of exposure to about 13 DC government agencies. And working with those agencies gives me a perspective on the challenges that we have in the district as a business owner. It also gives me an idea and perspective on the efficiencies that we have in our city when we work together and really work to identify and solve those problems that we have facing us. I also understand the challenges that we have in our ward right now, which are resonating, and we talk about this forum after forum. Of course, affordable housing is top of mind, and it's a big issue because it's something that we need to address. We cannot accept the status quo, so we need to move forward on making sure that we have treatments for our affordable housing issues, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. I'm also excited about talking about what we're doing in our transportation side, connecting our transportation network better
Okay,
And-
thanks, Monty. Got to
Thank you.
cut in here. Sorry, the gong has
Yeah.
sounded here.
No,
Uh,
sure,
and the,
thank you.
And the gong has sounded without Mr. Goulet, who and I'll make this proposal to everybody. When Eric finally does log on, let's give him the chance for an opening statement. How about that? Does that work? Okay.
Yeah, you need
Uh,
Philip. too.
And now we have Philip Thomas.
Good evening. My name is Phil Thomas. I'm a former elementary school teacher, bridge builder, community leader. I've been involved in government I've been involved in the community as a two-term ANC commissioner to current chair of the Ward 3 Democrats, as well as the chair or president of the Federation of Community Associations. Also have government experience working for Mayor Bowser as a Ward 3 liaison, as well as ending as director of the Mayor's Office of Clean Cities, so working on environmental equity across the District of Columbia. So really honing in on composting, as well as trash around neighborhoods in wards 5, 7, and 8, and to teach them about beautification of their community. Also have proven results by fostering support for the short-term family housing site over in Cathedral Commons on Idaho Avenue, as well as working with the Hearst Park and Pool project that opens up next month. So I can't wait to do a cannonball when that opens. As I'm running on to improve the quality of life in Ward 3, we have a stain on our campaign as we keep on hitting 3,000 doors a week. We call it 3 S's and an H, as we focus on seniors, as we gotta take care of those that came before us, as we need a senior wellness center in our community. As schools, we need to relieve overcrowding in our neighborhood schools. Safety, we need to drive down crime and increase the police force, as well as housing is the last one, and which is an important H, and that increase affordable housing and workforce housing so our teachers can live in the community in which they serve. And just remember that it's 3 S's and an H: safety, seniors, schools, and housing. And you can visit my website at philforward3.com and find out more information about me and my campaign. Thank you.
Outstanding, Mr. Thomas. And that wraps it all up with the notable exception of Mr. Goulet. When he finally does surface, we've sent him links and hopefully he will come into the chat at the Zoom at some point. But in the interim, let's move on. And I'm going to turn it over to Robert Gordon to ask the first question in the lightning round of 1-minute answers.
The question may be longer than the answer. You've had the opportunity to review the Office of Planning's draft small area plan for Chevy Chase. Our community wants to add affordable housing here for many good reasons. However, the draft plan has proven to be highly controversial in the community. As council member, how would you work with the neighborhood to help resolve the concerns of residents? One of the major concerns is that the draft alludes to future changes in the comp plan for increased density in the residential streets off of Connecticut Avenue. Would you support changing zoning in residential areas in Chevy Chase and possibly other parts of Ward 3? It's kind of a two-part question, and we'll start with Ben Bergman.
I'd say the short answer, yes. I think we have a huge problem in the city, as I said in my opening, with a lack of affordable housing at all rates, deeply affordable housing for essential workers, for public sector workers, for federal workers, for professionals, for seniors. We have to get serious about that. That's a big problem. And to make progress on big problems, you have to be willing to do big things. And so that does mean making changes to Chevy Chase. We have to start with big changes in Chevy Chase. We have to do big changes in Cleveland Park. We have to do big changes in Ward 3 if we want to make this a city where everyone can afford to live. Now, I think the thing is we have to get people to yes. So the way I would approach this is my goal is to end up with a plan where it has more housing and that is good for the community. That's where I start with. Let's get everybody together. Let's talk about how it can be improved. I think definitely, if you look at an individual project, those projects can always be improved. And criticism often is correct about all sorts of issues with projects. But we have to have a get to yes mindset and not start from the starting point that maybe we can slow roll things, maybe we can delay things, maybe we
Thank you, Ben.
Thanks.
Same question, Deirdre Brown.
So my answer, I have taken a look at the small area plan, and here's my proposal. I think that we must take this opportunity to make sure that that location has housing that is affordable across multiple income levels. So we go from deeply affordable to our workforce housing in our upper middle class. It needs to be all mixed in. I think the units, we need to make sure our units there for seniors mixed in as well for our seniors who are on fixed income. We also need to make sure that some of those units are large enough for our families. So that means that as our families age out or grow out of their 1 and 2 bedroom apartments and cannot afford a 3-bedroom home in Ward 3 because it's over $1.5 million, they have a place they can stay, so they can stay in the ward. I am in favor of making sure that that development is mixed use. So we can have community services there like libraries and recreation centers, but also retail, bringing in more retail businesses because we need to bring our main streets back. And we need to do this together by all working together, listening to all stakeholders and coming to a middle ground on a resolution.
Thank you, Deirdre. And I've seen that Eric is signed in as an attendee. Could you elevate him, please, as a host?
I think I'm here, Robert.
Oh, excellent.
Here you,
Okay.
Eric. Let's go, Eric. Let Eric give us one.
Glad to see you there.
Excellent, Eric.
Spence, back to you then.
Yeah, back to you. You get, and this is not that this is a big ambush now that you're on, but you have 1.5 minutes to make an opening statement.
Oh, well, terrific. And answer the question at the same time, correct?
You can do that.
And answer
Okay,
the question if you got the question. Yeah. Bonus. So
do
2.5 minutes.
2.5 minutes. Okay, well, fantastic. I'll work both in. I think part of being a good council member is the ability to adapt under pressure here. We had some technical difficulties there. My IP address, I think, was blocked when I got kicked out of the meeting. So glad to be back in by phone here, and thanks for your patience and waiting for me. Now, I'm Eric Goulet, father of 2 young sons in the Palisades neighborhood. And one thing I think that we really important is we need to elect a leader here in Ward 3 who's the fighter for the residents of this ward and who has the experience to be able to lead us to a better place. I've been an attorney in the city here and had a 19-year career in DC government, working as DC's budget director for 4 years and as the council budget director. But I think what's equally important is to have a council member who's a good listener here in the ward. When I started this campaign, I went to every neighborhood in Ward 3 and spoke with residents and heard from them what their concerns were. The number one concern in every neighborhood was the issue of public safety and crime. And we've got a plan to make sure we bring 4,000 police officers back into our neighborhoods here in the District of Columbia. And I plan to support the mayor's proposal to bring more officers in. And I'm very disheartened that right now it's being reduced by the DC Council right now. Also, I listened to our neighborhoods about school overcrowding. Our residents were very concerned that we are creating class sizes that are not maximizing our students' ability to learn in these classrooms. I think as your council member, I'm going to have a very real discussion about data-driven boundary changes that we need to look at in our ward to be able to ensure that we can have pre-K 3 and 4 in our neighborhood schools here in Ward 3. Moving on to the issue of listening, I think we also need to listen about the small area plan here in Chevy Chase. The residents aren't trying to keep new people out from moving into our city. What they want is they want the ability to be heard, and they want density, but they want density to be sure it's done right. What we want to make sure we can do is have our police officers, our fire EMTs, our teachers, and the rest of our workforce be able to live here in workforce housing within our community. So we do need transit-oriented density, of course, but we need to make sure that we take care of those residents who are serving our Ward 3 communities in our neighborhoods. Is that my time, Spence? You're giving me a nod. I don't see a clock.
I think, yeah.
I think you've answered the question and you've introduced yourself. Thank you very much.
We salute your conciseness, Eric. So back to you, Robert.
Okay. Next up, Henry, do you remember the question?
Yes, I do. And I'm happy to say that having taken a look at the plan that I'm very enthusiastic about affordable housing. I've been involved in the fight for affordable housing for a very long time with the Washington Interfaith Network, pushing for the addition of new affordable housing along with Matt. I want to say that I, from day one, would be ready to get these new affordable housing units built. I've been proud to take a Yes in My Backyard campaign, a Yes in My Backyard approach to my campaign from day one, and that's not going to stop here because people who are less economically advantaged deserve the same privilege that you and I had growing up here. They deserve the same privilege of going to our amazing schools in Ward 3, being a part of our amazing Ward 3 culture, and getting to live in my opinion, some of the greatest neighborhoods in the world. And I'm ready to fight like hell to make sure that that's possible. And that's what I'm going to say. Yes, my backyard, and yes, this affordable housing. And we need to knock down any barriers to that. And if that means, cutting red tape in the ANC process, then I'm for it.
Thank you very much, Henry. Tricia, please focus on how to bring the community together over a small area plan.
Will do. So I read the small area plan for Chevy Chase, and for the attendees who don't know what this was a plan for 5 blocks or so coming down Connecticut Avenue into Chevy Chase. And I saw the plan as a model for what other areas can do in terms of revitalizing the whole area. I do believe that there's going to be a push in the city for above our libraries. When they are renovated, they're going to put housing there, affordable housing, inclusionary zoning, the whole bit. But more than that, if we are going to keep our businesses thriving, we are going to have to commit to denser housing along our corridors. And what I saw in Chevy Chase was, softer density there, 3 stories high. And this is what I would say to communities to bring them together. It's not going to be a choice of things staying exactly the same versus getting this density. Because we know here in Palisades that if you resist that density, the businesses are going away. And I think that I have experience in letting people know that you got to embrace change to keep what you love.
Thank you. Same question, Bo Finley.
Thank you. So going back to sort of the initial question too, I've read the small area plan. The draft of it as it stands now creates, I think, really good opportunities for reasonable and sustainable and equitable growth, and it provides needed housing at all affordability levels. A streetscape that would support local independent businesses, keeping the Chevy Chase Main Street charm. It's really anchored with the Avalon and the arcade. I think one of the things OP could have done, the Office of Planning could have done, and should still do, is make it abundantly clear that the future land use map changes only change the commercial corridor. One house in from the community center will not have its zoning changed, but OP needs to make this abundantly clear. I think doing so would actually go a long way to reassuring the community and establishing credibility and a level of trust. So as council member, I would ask OP to come back and really explain the basics of how this all works. But yeah, I still have problems with the draft plan. It lacks important details. It doesn't have good transportation, and it doesn't talk about affordable housing beyond what is required by inclusionary zoning. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Same question, Matt Fruman.
So you started off with a question about single family zoning, and I think that I'm not there in terms of getting rid of single family zoning. And I think that the focus should be on the corridors and the transit hubs. We have enormous opportunities there. Friendship Heights to the north, the Wardman to the south, all along the corridors. We have lots of opportunities. I don't see a change to single family zoning. And I think it was a giant mistake for the Office of Planning to include that in the draft. That was an issue that was raised at the outset. It was pushed off of the table. It wasn't part of the discussion. And then they came back and put it in the draft plan. And if there was ever a way to torch trust, that's the way to do it. So I wish they had not done that. I think it needs to come out. In the meantime, though, I think everyone should take their hats off to the ANC and Chevy Chase, DC. They have done a phenomenal job over a period of years. I've read the report. I've read the 21-page draft resolution by the ANC. I think the folks in Chevy Chase, DC should be really proud of the work that's been done. And the question is what comes out at the end of the process with all of that ANC input. And for me as the council member, the first thing I'd be doing is working with the ANC, learning from the ANC and the people's representatives about how best to get this done. And boy,
Thank you very
you're
much,
lucky.
Matt. Thank you very much. Monty Monash. Same question.
Great, thank you. Yes, so I too have read the small area planning for the Chevy Chase community, and I think that I agree that that it does require a little bit more detail. In the engineering community that I work in, you know, you plan it, you design it, you build it. I think it lacks some specifics as to the detail of what happens beyond the main street. But I do want to applaud the process. The process was fantastic in having that outreach of listening to all the voices of the community, whether they are opposing or for the build out. I do see a great opportunity for public land use, and that should be a model throughout the ward, actually throughout the city, to make sure that we're using those opportunities to expand and increase that housing stock that we so desperately need. I do also like the opportunity for us to really look at more innovative ideas within the transportation side of this plan that needs to be included. So focusing on some different issues and moving past what we have already will be important to focus on with this project.
Thank you for sticking to the time and your good answer. Phil Thomas.
Thank you, Robert. So I have also read the small area plan. Also, I have talked to the neighbors, which I think is vastly important. Also, I've talked to the small business owners. I've talked to Pete at the Parthenon. I've talked to Chris at Blue 44. So I have talked to those business owners about the small area plan. As I know, the ANC approved the plan, but some of the neighbors in the 1 to 2 block radius have some concerns. And I've listened to them about parking and also the structures of the building. Even though I think we need more housing on top of the library and in the community center, as we know, it's in desperate need of a remodel. I plan to address that as somebody who's worked with the community, somebody has delivered on projects like the short-term family housing as well. When neighbors had a vast issue of it coming in their neighborhood, I got the job done. So I have a proven track record on delivering for the community projects like this, and I plan to continue that track record as Ward 3 council member.
Thank you very much, Phil. I'm going to hand it back to Spence for question number 2.
All right, folks, question number 2, very short and sweet. Do you think there should be a new DC public school built in the recently renovated Hardy Park? Do you think the lab school's current lease for the old Hardy school building should be rescinded? And more generally, how would you address overcrowding in Ward 3 schools? So first up, Deirdre.
I believe that was a 3-part question. Okay, so the first question was about the GDS.
20 seconds for each.
Thank you. The GDS, yes, I think we should use that as a school. It's an empty building. It's already set up as a school, so we should use it for the purpose that it's already there. Plus, we've already spent the money and bought it, so we need to keep it and use it, not keep it empty. The lab school, I think, was the second question. And on that question, as a contracts person, that's what I read all day is contracts. It is very difficult to rescind a contract unless someone has breached something. So I understand that people want that. I just don't foresee that happening. So I think that's a done deal, in my opinion. I haven't read their contract, obviously. And then the third is about overcrowding. We need to be very, we need to look at other locations in the ward where we can bring in more schools. Especially, I would like to see us bring in more of our elementary and middle schools, because those are the classrooms that really need to have the smaller sizes. We need to use what we have in the ward and use our resources smartly so that we can service all of our kids and give them what they need. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And now Henry Cohen, you're up.
I want to open by disagreeing with what my opponent there just said about how middle and elementary schools need to be the main thrust of combating overcrowding. When I walk into my journalism class, there are 40 students sitting in that room, 40. And that's not a conducive environment to high school learning. So I do think that needs to be a major point of discussion. Do I support building a new school at the GDS site? Yes, I do. Do I support?
And let me interrupt here real quick. We are not talking about GDS. We're talking about
Oh,
Hardy
sorry.
Park.
Sorry, I saw the
Sorry.
GDS thing in the chat there, got wires crossed. Yes, I support building a new school in Hardy Park. Answer has not changed at all. When it comes to the lab school's lease, I would be in favor of rescinding the lease and making that a fully public school, but I understand the point of it, and I understand that is hard to do. And that would not be the first priority. But really, it's about making sure that we have a substantive education system for students, for people like me, making sure that nobody else has to walk into a classroom with 40 other kids with a broken door handle and a leaky roof. And the best way to do that is to build new schools and to put money into our existing schools. Build new high schools, build new elementary schools, build new middle schools, build every kind of school you can think of. I'm for it.
Okay, thanks, Henry.
You're
Your
not going
time
to
is
find
up.
me going against the development of a public school. Thank you very much.
Okay, excellent. Now I turn it over to Ms. Tricia Duncan.
So I'm going to be very concise here. Yes, I am for building an elementary school at Hardy Park. And yes, I am going to fight to get that lab school back. The lab school does a wonderful job with what they do, but they can do it anywhere. I will spend every bit of political capital I have to make sure that nefarious lease, which I have read, everybody knows that I have been fighting against that lease since the day it was signed. I'm going to be fighting for that building back, but we do need an elementary school there. Of course, I'm in favor of the high school. According to DCPS, we also need another middle school and an elementary school in the ward for Ward 3 students. And rest assured, when it comes to Hardy Park, I want to save the park. I want an expanded school, and I want it in the DCPS owned building that is existing there. That is my stance.
All right, thank you very much. And now over to Bo Finley.
Thank you for the question. So I'm going to address it backwards, right? The first issue of overcrowding. What we need to do is we need to build more schools. We need to expand our existing schools. We need to maintain, or rather reduce classroom size so that, you know, students like Henry get the best education they can. We need to make sure that schools outside of Ward 3 are as good as our Ward 3 schools so that folks want to attend their neighborhood schools to relieve the pressure on our schools. I support the Stoddard expansion. It's belated, but I really am looking forward to that going through. Second question, should the lab school lease be rescinded? I agree with Deirdre Brown. That's very difficult to do. I was very disappointed with what happened there, and I'm disappointed with the waste of great renovation of Hardy Park. Now about Hardy Park, yes, the school should be built there, but ANC 3D should be a strong voice for the community to make sure there's a construction management agreement, to make sure there's a transportation management agreement, to make sure that landscape architecture is set up in such a way as to preserve the neighborhood feel of the park. And I hope that ANC 3D will get involved with this and really work hard on behalf of the community.
Okay, thanks a lot, Bo. And Matt Fruman.
Okay, so I mean, the lab school lease is a travesty, and I would do everything I could to get it unraveled. I would use carrots and sticks. So, I mean, we all talk about sticks, but we're going to spend a lot of money to avoid using the lab school. And if we could use some of that money to get the lab school out of that building, I would do it. Do we need a new school? If we don't get the lab school, the right way to do it is for the school to be in the old Hardy. But if we need a new school, I don't think it needs to be the size that is being talked about. Old Hardy is where it is because it serves a certain catchment area. And we need a school that's big enough to serve that catchment area. We shouldn't be building a school that's going to then draw from the Stoddard boundary. That's creating another big problem. I think we should be, if we need to, we should be building a small school next to Old Hardy and build a big enough addition at Stoddard to ensure that the Stoddard community can stay intact. We need to address overcrowding, but we need to do it strategically, and we need to do it in a way that works for all of our communities. And right now, the proposals on the table don't do that.
Thank you very much, Matt. And Mr. Goulet, how do you weigh in on this question?
Well, thank you very much. I don't think we legally can rescind lab school lease. So I think that's off the table.
Right now, these schools are scheduled to begin construction in fiscal year 23. I'd like to keep the money in the budget, but push that back 1 year. I think what we could do in that period of time is try to look for a better option. I'd rather build the new elementary school at the GDS site rather than on Hardy Park. And I'd like to find another site for high school. We need a new high school for Ward 2 and Southern Ward 3. We desperately need that. We could use the District Opportunity to Purchase Act over the next year to find more space for that. I also was doing door-to-door throughout Glover Park just yesterday and spoke with many parents. We absolutely should not be splitting up the Stoddard boundary. So we need to take a year. We need to find other sites for these schools. And we really need to take a serious look at boundary discussions here and have a data-driven process to analyze boundaries and how we fill slots. Because right now, parents that I spoke with want to be able to send their 3 and 4-year-olds to pre-K slots here in their by right schools in their neighborhoods. And we need to make that happen.
Thank you very much, Mr. Goulet. Ms. Monash.
Yes, thank you. I will be concise as well. I believe that we do need to build out that MacArthur Boulevard site for the high school. I think it's
Again,
really,
we're not talking about the high school on MacArthur. We're speaking of Hardy School on Foxhole
oh,
Road.
I am so sorry. Yes, I'm sorry. The Hardy School site, I think that is a challenge. You know, it's already in a legal structure that I don't believe that we will be able to remove at this point, but you know, that's worth looking into and working through over the next year to come. But right now, this is what's happening. I do believe that we need to expand our schools in this ward, especially because we have because of the overcrowding, we do have social services that are definitely, I'm sorry, the services for special needs students are definitely suffering because of overcrowding in the schools. I see that my time is going to be up, so I don't want to get into the other issues, but I do want to say that that I do believe that the Hardy School site is a place where we do need to look into making sure that we build out another school location.
Excellent, and I appreciate your consideration of the clock. Phil Thomas, to you.
Yes, thank you. As a former elementary school teacher, and as somebody who has dyslexia, it was a tragedy that the lab school contract got renewed, but I would have been a student that probably would have went to lab as I had severe dyslexia. I agree with the other candidates that it's going to be hard to get out of that lease. When it comes to Hardy, a school at Hardy Park, I think that's the wrong location. As somebody who worked with the government at the time to get the park renovated and spent $50 million to put a dog park there and other amenities, I don't want to waste taxpayers' dollars to redo the park again or tear up the park to put a new school there. I think we need to find out other options to relieve overcrowding. I do agree with the GDS site for high school. But when it comes to overcrowding in our neighborhood schools, we got to look at the entire ward. I know the Whittier School is going bankrupt, so that's a good possibility as well. We need to look at there. Also, we just need to there's other opportunities across Ward 3 that we can look to find locations.
Okay, Phil, I gotta cut in here and give Ben Bergman, the final word on this burning topic.
Great. So, you know, first I'd say we need to invest in our public schools generally so that every neighborhood and every ward has an excellent school. That isn't the case right now. And so that's why there is such demand to get into Ward 3 schools. It's also a great thing about our schools in Ward 3. They are excellent. And so we do need to invest in infrastructure so that we don't have overcrowding. The Hardy site, I think, is not ideal. Neither is the GDS from a transportation perspective. And we need to think about that. And we need to focus on making those sites work if that's what we do. I want to focus on the Hardy lease though, because it's really what I said at the very beginning about the way this town functions. It's like Casablanca. People are shocked that the lease went through in December. No one knew. It just went right under the amount where the council would have to review it. It's outrageous. Everybody knew what was happening. The whole process with the Hardy School and the lease is symptomatic of a city that needs oversight, that needs a council that's aggressive with agency heads who are acting as if they never have to answer questions for the things that they do and are never held accountable. And that's now we're dealing with this problem over what to do with this site because no one really held the DME accountable for a decision that was outrageous. Thank you.
Okay, Ben, thank you. And we are now moving on to question number 3, and I turn it over to Robert Gordon.
Thank you, Spence. I'm going to have to learn how to be more succinct in my questions, but here goes. Since January, there's been a series of violent and, at least in one case, deadly incidents in Upper Connecticut Avenue, apartment buildings, and a hotel. The sniper at Burke School in Van Ness, the incident at Albemarle in Connecticut, the Days Inn shooting, and in January, the arrest of a first-degree murder suspect in which firearms were discharged behind my house. These are compounding residents' concerns about their personal safety that were already running high because of increases in carjacking and broad daylight robberies. Have you examined the violent Connecticut Avenue incidents? Do you see a trend? And what do you propose the city do in response to these events? Henry Cohen, please.
First off, I want to extend my condolences to everybody who was injured or in any other way harmed by the recent shooting at the Edmund Burke School. I myself was locked down at Wilson at the time, which is a very scary experience and an experience that nobody in any school should ever have to experience. And one thing that it made abundantly clear was that our current system, our current status quo of DC politics is not working. People like to act like it's the big scary progressives who are going to come and, it's their fault that public safety is bad. It's the establishment who's in charge of Washington right now. And all this is happening under their watch, which is why it's important that we elect leaders with new ideas, with bold ideas. I've been a big supporter of the phrase depackage the police. The police right now are being asked to do everything from mental health care all the way to storming buildings with potential snipers in. And that's not a system that's going to work. We need to ensure that we have mental health units available. We need to ensure that we have neighborhood policing. We need to make sure that we have a police force that people are not scared of dealing with, because there's legitimate fear for a lot of communities of dealing with the police, because they've had to watch people be unfairly arrested, prosecuted, anything you can name it. We need to make sure that people can trust them again. We can do that by ensuring that they stop abusing these groups. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Henry. Next up is Tricia Duncan.
Thank you. A minute is not a lot to address this whole thing, but Palisades is also not immune to gun violence. We had a number of incidents with guns, and obviously at the federal level, guns are an issue in getting them out of our city. We could use some DC statehood, but specifically to your problem, in the mayor's new budget, she is funding this new program that was put out by the National Institute of Criminal Justice Reform that is targeting 200 individuals who are already known to the criminal justice system and surrounding them with social services, like a team of people for each individual. It's expensive, but 70% of the violent crime in this city is committed by individuals that are already known to the criminal justice system. And I am going to be keeping an eye on that program. I hope the council funds that. We can't jail our way out of this situation, but in the interim, we need to keep our people safe. And I am a supporter of the police, but I'll be looking at that program specifically to address the violent crime that we're seeing.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Tricia. Bo Finley.
Thank you. So my heart goes out to those affected by recent violence in Ward 3 and across the district. All of us deserve to be safe. And we must have public services or public safety as a priority. I spent the last 5 years as an attorney in the Public Safety Bureau at the FCC. There I worked on a lot of issues, but mostly I focused on 911 reliability, and ensuring that our first responders can have reliable networks upon which they can act and save lives. In the district, we're in the midst of re-examining our policing, and this is a necessary step in improving our policing systems and reducing crime. We need a data-driven approach to public safety and viewing violence through, I think, a public health lens. I think that will be the best way to approach it. We currently have the 6th largest police force in the country, but we're the 20th largest city. So I'd like to work on approach rather than size. I'd like to engage in community-oriented policing, which means getting police out of their cars and back into patrolling neighborhoods. Our police spend about 22% of their time on patrol. The national average for cities our size is 33%. So that's 50% more time on patrol. Community policing will change that and should help our response times. Finally, we also need to address root causes of crime, which is fundamentally about poverty. Thank you.
Oh, thank you for that answer. Matthew Fruman.
So people need to feel and be safe. And I think that we need to add to our police force. I think that's just a reality. And we should do it as quickly as we can. But you don't have to be a social scientist in this environment to know that crime is up because that trauma is up throughout our society. It's up everywhere. And we need to address that reality. We need to change the culture of our police. We need to work on building trust between our police and the most impacted communities. We need to attack the root causes of crime the way that's been suggested. The program that Tricia talked about is a great program. I think it's an irony today that that actually emanates from Kenyon McDuffie and the NEAR Act. It's not, the mayor has picked it up, but it's an idea that he had put into play a number of years ago, and it was seen at the time as a radical idea. And now it's feted in the Washington Post. We need to do those kinds of things to get kids off of a path that's going to be destructive for them and destructive for us. But in order to get there, we need to attack the root causes as a fundamental thing.
Thank you, Matt. Next up, Eric Goulet.
Well, thank you. Back in 2011, I worked with Kathy Lanier when I was budget director for the city, and she said at that time we needed between 4,000 and 4,200 sworn officers, and we had around 3,600. We funded an increase of 100 per year on net, and by year 4, Kathy Lanier had brought crime down to a 50-year low. And we need to do that again right now. The mayor has asked the council for a package that will increase the number of officers on the force, and a third of it has been cut, and that's unacceptable. We need to support our chief, we need to support our mayor, and we need to rebuild our police department to at least 4,000 sworn officers. When I spoke with residents, particularly in the Cleveland Park neighborhood, they were very fearful right now about public safety and emphasized this was the #1 priority that we needed to focus on. And we also need to look at oversight. We have a residential program right now for voucher holders. We're not providing wraparound services that they need to be able to maintain a safe and stable lifestyle in the buildings that they're in. And we need to focus on oversight as a council and making sure that we're providing the services that we promised. And finally, we need to address the root causes of crime. The best way to do that is to connect people to jobs, real jobs at our businesses through programs, through DOES that lead to a job at the end of the train.
Thank you very much, Eric. Next up, Monty Monash.
Yes, thank you. I do support wholeheartedly the chief of police and the mayor's request for 4,000 police officers. I think it's the only pathway to make sure that we have that safe, that public safety and that trust that we need so desperately right now in our communities. I do believe that that we need to act and be very strong on gun legislation. I believe that gun sense is common sense, and that we need to make sure that we are focusing on fighting back and making sure through fighting for statehood that we have these types of autonomy so that we can properly keep our streets safe and make sure that guns are not in the hands of folks that have either mental health issues or folks that might be just into doing nefarious things in general. I also want to say that having our police officers be a part of the community, being proactive and knowing our community issues is very important. So having them out of their cars, on the streets, bikes, and walking is going to be another big part of keeping our community safe.
Thank you very much. Phil Thomas.
Thank you. As Ward 3 council member, I would take a holistic approach to public safety. I'm in favor of hiring more police who are born here, raised here, and want to live in the community in which they serve. We also need to hire more women on the police force as well. We need to invest in successful strategies like violence interrupters, credible messengers, and roving leaders in the neighborhood watch program as well. We need to increase the police presence as well as the response time when somebody calls 911, especially around the communities and the commercial corridor as well. When it comes to the voucher program, as we know, the pathway to end homelessness is housing. So when it needs to be more coordination between the agencies, like the Department of Health, MPD, Veterans Affairs, as well as Housing Authority. As we know, when the MPD gets called, no other agency is informed. So we need to have more coordination. Also, we need to invest in behavioral health. As my wife is a behavioral health nurse practitioner, we definitely have to wrap around services, but also hone in on the root cause of it as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Ben Bergman?
Yeah, so, public safety is a big concern. I agree with that. I'm speaking right now from my mother's apartment in Cleveland Park. That's why you can't hear my kids, but she lives on Tilden in Connecticut, so right near where the shooting happened, and she was locked down with everybody else. And I think what I'm frustrated by with this whole discussion is a tendency of people to try to look for easy solutions to complex problems. The gun incident that happened on Connecticut Avenue with the shooter at the Burke School, that was a way different incident than some of the other incidents of crime that we have, right? Those are going to be dealt with in different ways, and they're going to require different solutions. And it's not just that violence interrupters or more police or whatever is going to deal with all these problems. We have to have a comprehensive strategy. And right now, what we hear is the easy answer. A round number will get us there. Based upon what? There's no real data. It's just a round number. It's a talking point in search of a policy. We need a real plan to keep our city safe. And that means focusing on quality and not quantity when it comes to our police force. Thanks.
Thank you. Last up on this question, Deirdre Brown.
Thank you for the question. As a former Burke parent, I've been a parent there for 7 years. I've sat in that carpool lane more times than I can count. I was very upset when this occurred. I know a lot of families who are still there. My son happened to be in the neighborhood at the time, and this is just obviously unacceptable. But I want to make sure that we are being very conscious about how we're approaching public safety. So that means making sure that people like that are prosecuted, that we are enforcing our gun laws, that we are also, though, helping people who need help with violence interrupters. We're giving our young people opportunities outside of pathway to college, so vocational opportunities, so that they can come out and earn a living, because we know that poverty and crime are related. And I'm hearing from the community that they really want to see more police presence on foot in the neighborhoods, especially on our business corridors, to help our small businesses. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, that wraps it up for question 3. Spence, you're up for question 4. Yes. You're on mute.
Sorry, that's an amateur mistake. I apologize. Question 4. A lot of people have mentioned the issues surrounding transportation with Hardy, and the question a couple of questions ago, and also the new MacArthur High School. And DDOT has studied the Palisades Trolley Trail, for example, and trying to find a fix for trying to deal between link up neighborhoods and try to get safe non-vehicle traffic there. So the question, and this, by the way, was quite a popular one, what would you do about the trolley trail? Do you think the city should upgrade it? Or do you, and what other solutions do you think you can do to try to mitigate some of the impacts of transportation that are going to happen with these schools? First up, Tricia Duncan.
So I have a mantra. It's called Safe and Accessible Trails for All. And when it comes to bike lanes, my overarching things is that DDOT's plan to do connected and protected is a must in the city. Our roads are already choked with cars, and even a small percentage of people changing their mode of transportation can have big benefits in the neighborhood. So a multimodal form of transportation for our increasing population, particularly if, in the coming decades, we're going to see increased density in our neighborhoods. We need to get kids safely on bikes to the new high school. The trolley trail seems to me the number one way to do it. There are a lot of bike lane proposals going on. I would really like to see the Arizona Bridge. That bridge is failing. We need to get that funding back. But I have I've been pretty consistent on what my feelings are with the trolley trail. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Duncan and Mr. Finley.
Thank you. I agree with Tricia. When the schools were announced, the first thing that I thought of was how on earth are students going to get there? The Palisades Trail does provide a great opportunity. I fully support it. I think if we can pave it, we can make it better, more accessible for cyclists and runners and walkers and anybody in the neighborhood who wants to get to their neighborhood school. But we also do need a multimodal approach. We need to make sure there's adequate bus service down Foxhall, down MacArthur, and a connected bike network for those students who are old enough to cycle to school on their own. We need to make sure they can get there safely and get to the Palisades Trail safely. So I would like to take a multimodal approach. I think it's something we need to work heavily with DDOT on to make sure that that all transportation is safe, reliable, regular, relevant, and effective. So thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Bo. Matt Fruman.
So I spent part of COVID riding around on my bicycle, my electric assist bicycle, I will admit, and the trail network around the city and into Prince George's County up into Montgomery County is phenomenal. And we need to fill it out here in the district. The trolley trail creates an opportunity for that. It also creates an opportunity for transportation to the high school. I support bringing the trolley trail back to life. On the high school, the proposal was to have 500 out-of-boundary seats for the MacArthur High School. And I work on education issues around the city, and I called my friends in Ward 7 and Ward 8 and asked them what their view was. And they were near tears of frustration because they don't want to send their kids an hour and a half across the city to go to a school on MacArthur Boulevard. They want an investment in their neighborhood. So that high school, it's a fantasy to think that it's going to be a citywide high school. The transportation obstacles are too huge. That high school is a great idea if the Hardy community embraces it, but it needs to be smaller than what's proposed currently.
Okay, thank you very much, Matt. Mr. Goulet.
Well, thank you. I mean, the first thing we need to do, since this is about transportation, is we need to stabilize WMATA's finances. Tracy Lowe, who's supporting me, great job as the council's rep right now on the WMATA board. I'd like to join her on the board as the council appointee as an alternate, so I could work to stabilize WMATA's finances. We need to make sure we have more Metro bus service throughout the District of Columbia. I'd like to expand bus. Even if we do expand bus, though, I'm not sure that's going to be a good solution for the high school site because it's so isolated and so far away from other parts of the community. I do think we need to put upgrades into the trolley trail. I run on the trail. My kids try to bike it, but it's a swamp at many times of the year. You can't get through on it. So I think we need to first look at drainage on the trail. I'd like to see a compromise where we put in some sort of fine gravel path on it, but I am open to listening to both sides that think we need to keep it more just as it is, and then also that we would put a trail there. What I don't want it to turn into, though, is just another Capitol Crescent Trail where the bikes go too fast for families to walk and children to bike. I think that would be concerning. And if we want better access to the Capitol Crescent Trail, we should put that in at Arizona Avenue so people can get to it easier.
Okay, thank you very much, Eric and Monty.
Yes, so I think that the trolley trail is a great opportunity for connecting our network of multimodal transportation throughout the city. I think that the trail has a long way to go in terms of being ready for it to be a linked opportunity. So some phasing would have to be worked out, but I do think that it's a great opportunity to do that. I think that that we need to make sure that we are working with DDOT and WMATA to make sure that the trains and the buses link up so that we can move students from across the city to the MacArthur Boulevard site. That'll be quite important. And also making sure that the bus lines that are our neighborhood buses like the M4 and the D6 are able to have expanded services, making it more available throughout the day and not just during those rush hour times, but we need to make sure it's more available throughout the day.
Okay, thank you very much. And now Philip Thomas.
Yes. So with a new high school coming at the GDS side, we definitely have to leverage other modes of transportation outside of vehicle traffic. I will work with WMATA to try to increase the bus service and also explore bringing the circulator to that part of the neighborhood as well. When it comes to the trolley trail, as somebody who's an avid cyclist and commuter as well, I know I've talked to bicyclists who they said they will not use it because of the length of the space. They'd rather use MacArthur Boulevard. When I've talked to those cyclists who ride mountain bikes with the thick tires, they like to trial as is, as they can feel the surface of being outside of DC, but being inside DC as well. I definitely know running the trail, how muddy it gets and how dirty you get after running, that we know something has to be done to the trail. I support putting crushed stone or some type of sand down and seeing if the city can maintain that, and then maybe look about paving it and also expanding it and fixing the bridge as well. As we know, when it comes to the trail, we have to leverage it that it will end someplace. So that's what I'm in favor of. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Moving on to Ben.
Great. You know, I'll just say first, as the chair of ANC 3D, I'm extremely pleased to hear all the candidates be on record for investing in transit in our community, both the trail and bus and other forms of transportation. I think that's essential. You know, when I talk to folks at Glover Park who are, you know, having to think about going to do this new high school or the new elementary school, when that progresses, this is the main concern. And it's a concern for people who live there, who aren't going to a high school, who just live in the Palisades and have no way of getting anywhere by public transportation, because that bus does not come. It's not very useful, right? So we have got to invest in these things. The trail is important. We have to build a protected bike network that's useful in the city, but we also have to work on a bus network that's useful. I've talked about creating a home rule transit network, because we have got to work with WMATA. We have to strengthen their finances. We have to push them to invest in metro expansion long-term, but we also have to not just kind of sit back and wait for good things to happen. We've got to take ownership of it and deploy the circulator and the streetcar to build a transit system that works for Washingtonians. Thanks so much.
All right, and following Ben, we have Deirdre.
Thank you. So this site is supposed to have 1,000 children, 500 out of boundary, 500 in boundary. So let's say a 25% of that lives in the Palisades. That's who's going to use the trail, right? Because no one else will have access to the trail. So I'm not opposed to the trail, but the trail is a very small piece of what we need to do to make sure we're getting all these kids back and forth to this location safely. All right, when we start talking about kids who are coming across Ward 7, 8, or even kids who are in Ward 3, but on the other side of Ward 3, how they're getting here, it's not going to be by bike. Okay, so we need to make sure that we have a council member that is using common sense and working with WMATA and DDOT to make sure we're coming up with ways to get these kids here, that the transportation is reliable, affordable, and convenient. And that's how we're going to solve this transportation problem for this school. Thank you.
Excellent. I appreciate it very much. And I turn it now. Henry Cohen gets the last word.
So I'm going to take a look at both aspects of this question. Starting off on the smaller aspect with the trail, I'm a big supporter of the trail. I took the step of sitting down with a environmental scientist actually to discuss potential paving, things like that. And he said that permeable pavement or gravel would be easy to maintain and would not cause any drainage issues, things like that. So we can ensure that we have a bike lane that is operational for years to come. The other side of the question that I want to look at is the big scale, is transportation. Big supporter of buses, bus lanes, new bus stops, new bus lines, any of that. Circulator extension, any of that. And I want to dream big on this. 20 years from now, I want people to be arriving at that school by metro. And I'm going to take the steps towards that. But for now, we need to hammer home bus access. And I know that one of my opponents just said that other students from the other side of Ward 3 or other places are not going to be biking. Why not? Why not build a network of bike lanes that would allow them to bike and would allow any of those people to bike? I'm a fan of multimodal transportation, and that means bus, that means metro, that means bike, that means anything except cars, and I'm all for it.
And that means we're done, Henry. Okay, so very good. Thank you very much. And we are now done with question 4. Now we're on to number 5 with Robert Gordon.
Question 5 is in many ways parallel to the prior question, but I think it stands by itself. Where do you stand on the issue of protected bike lanes along Connecticut Avenue and across Ward 3? How do you balance the safety requirements of bikers with the loss of parking and traffic lanes? And that's Bo Finley will start us out on that. Bo, you're muted.
Who's the amateur now? So thank you, Robert. Like almost everyone on this panel, I've been a vocal supporter of the protected bike lanes and other forums. I'm a proud supporter of the protected bike lanes on Connecticut Avenue that preserve parking in our business districts. In fact, that's something that I was adamant about when working on the Citizens Advisory Committee and pushing for bike lanes in ANC 3C. Data around the country shows that protected bike lanes lower fatal crash rates, not just for cyclists, but for all road users. In San Francisco, which is known for its cyclist-unfriendly hills, fatalities have decreased 49.3%. In Seattle, protected bike lanes have reduced fatalities across all modes, 60.6%. And further, data around the world shows that protected bike lanes tend to lead to increased economic activity where they're deployed. So I think these protected bike lanes might not just save lives, but also help our businesses thrive.
And the balance between parking and traffic lanes?
Sure. So with the traffic aspect, well, so the parking's included in Concept C in our commercial corridors, which I think is great. But for the traffic, I'd like to see the city adopt smart technologies. A lot of smart cities do this, where they have dynamic traffic control. In dynamic traffic control, you can see the backup lined up. You have cameras on your lights. You see the backup, and you can make sure that when there is backup, the lights stay green for longer along your arterials, and it makes for traffic flowing smoothly. So yeah, I think that would be a great solution.
Thank you. Matt Fruman, same question.
So when I got into this race, I thought, this bike lane issue is going to be impossible, and I'm for bike lanes, but it's going to hurt me and hurt me bad. And then a couple of weeks ago, we had a debate where there was the Republican participated in the debate, and what's been surprising to me is every one of the Democratic candidates has supported bike lanes, and it was only when the Republican came on that we heard opposition to bike lanes, because we all take seriously, maybe that'll change tonight, but we all take seriously the idea that we have to seriously combat climate change. We need to become multimodal. So everyone had the same thinking that I had, that this might not be popular, but I'm for it. The challenges are going to be in implementation, and you want a council person who's in place who will work with communities where issues arise and come up with solutions and be sensitive to concerns that are raised, so that this future-oriented solution can work. The future's coming, but we need to work together to make sure that it works properly, and I'll do that as the council member.
Thank you. Eric?
Well, thank you very much. I agree completely with everything that's been said already on this issue. I mean, DC right now, we have a council member who is leaving us after 16 years of service, who's been a leader on the issue of the environment. And we need to continue to follow Mary's shoes. If we're going to be the type of city we want to build for our children in the next 30 years, we need to take steps now to change the way we do housing around our metros and along our bus corridors, and the way we add bike lanes throughout the city. But we also need to do it in a way where we listen to the community, to be sensitive concerns, so we get it right the first time. We need to make sure we don't have incidents where unforeseen things are occurring, where if we simply brought people together, we'd have been able to avoid that. And when I spoke to residents in Cleveland Park, their biggest concerns are that, if you take away parking, you're going to end up with people, parking in the neighborhoods, up the side streets, and then the residents who live there will have no place to park. And I think there's ways around that, where we increase public transit, and that if we need to, we do some below ground parking around the businesses. The businesses are also concerned about being able to have vehicles load and unload for their businesses. So we need to work on that issue too, and make sure we listen to everyone. But I do support protected bike. I think they're very important, and I support it wholeheartedly.
Thank you, Eric. Monty?
Yes. So I think that as we are looking at our multimodal system and trying to make sure that we are accommodating for all kinds of transportation options. We need to make sure that we have, and I've said this before, bike lanes that are protected are a part of the maintenance in our budget and not just a part of these one-off opportunities. So in order for us to really install these bike lanes that are protected, we need to make sure that we have the funding associated with keeping them safe moving forward. I also believe that we should do some bold things, like maybe like perhaps giving an opportunity for seniors to ride the bus for free, and also all the DC students, not just the DCPS students, to ride the bus for free too. That will help to alleviate some car traffic, as well as getting people more interested and more readily into the bus system that we have here in the city. And finally, I'd also like to say that we need to make sure we fully fund our Vision Zero programs and projects that we have in the hopper. There's a lot of that that's on the desk at DDOT, and we need to continue to fully fund those projects to make sure that folks that are on the road are safe when they're on the road.
Thank you. Phil?
Yes, as a former ANC commissioner, I work with my colleagues to deliver a bike lane on New Mexico Avenue that went to Glover Park and two-lane as well. As I will continue that as Ward 3 council member, work with the community to deliver the bike lane on Connecticut Avenue. I support the bike lane as well as ANC 3C and 3F and 3G. As well as our council member to make it more environmental friendly. I definitely think community engagement is important and was important as well, as we got to take into account our small businesses and our seniors as well. But I'm in favor of the project. I plan to continue to work with the community to deliver the project, and hopefully, and it is going to get accomplished.
Could you add about the balance with the loss of parking and traffic lanes, please?
Yes. So when it comes to a balance of parking and we definitely have to leverage for our seniors to ride the buses as well. And then when it comes to parking, we have to definitely work with small businesses on that and counteract of how individuals can park to support those small businesses.
Thank you. Ben Bergman?
Yeah, so in the short answer, I support with like my colleagues, like Matt said, making Connecticut Avenue safer. And I think there was extensive engagement, always can be better, but I think it's time to move forward on the specific plan. But zooming out to the question about how do you balance these issues, I think key to that is not thinking about it as a bike lane project. It's not the Connecticut Avenue bike lane project. It's the Connecticut Avenue project. We have to think about how we are designing our roadways in a comprehensive fashion that incorporates consideration at the same time, buses, bikes, cars, parking, pedestrians, etc. Because that's the way you build a transit system that works for today. Because our transit network currently, as we all know, is built for the commuter age. It was built in the 50s and the 60s. And it's not well attuned to some of the challenges we have. So that's why I proposed a parking reform commission, which isn't a punt, but it's really, the idea is let's get together, let's get some experts together and really look in a context-specific fashion at the parking rules that we have and create a system that addresses those concerns about businesses, but also allows us to build bike lanes where we need to build a network that works, to build bus lanes, which also may require removing substantial parking.
Ben, thank you for that comprehensive answer. Deirdre?
Thank you. So we all know that the bike lanes are coming in, and yes, they will be protected bike lanes. That's great. The issue, as you have pointed out, is regarding parking and transportation. So I've heard from my seniors, they're very concerned about the bus services being limited. The whole reason they live where they live is so they can use the bus service to get back and forth to places they need to be. So we need to make sure that we're either implementing dedicated bus lanes or floating bus islands so that we are not making it so our seniors and those who cannot ride a bike, persons with disabilities, etc., have a way to get around town. And of course, once again, transportation needs to be reliable, convenient, and affordable. When we start talking about parking, I think we need to make sure that we're looking at some areas we may be able to preserve some parking, because the truth is some people do need their cars because of where they work or their lifestyle. We also need to make sure that we're putting in ways that businesses who need to load from the front, whether it's dedicated loading zones have a way to be able to stay in business and get the supplies that they need. We need to work together as a community and making sure that all the residents are getting what they need out of this project. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Henry?
As I've said throughout the campaign, I am the bike lane candidate. I like to say that I've never seen a bike lane proposal I don't like, and that's still true. It's going to be true through the primary and for the rest of my life. I'm a big believer in the idea of putting people over parking. That means bike lanes, bus lanes, metro, any other kind of public transportation that you can imagine. We shouldn't be focusing on how we can store automobiles, which emit pollutants, are unsafe, and oftentimes can destroy the community feel. We should instead be focusing on how we can best serve commuters. And a lot of the time, a metro is going to be faster than a car. Bus in a dedicated bus lane is going to be faster than a car in traffic lanes. And a bike is going to be cleaner and better for your health. So those are the reasons that I support moving away from our car-dependent infrastructure. We could look at potentially closing streets down to car traffic, keeping them as bus lanes, or potentially, bike or commuter paths, pedestrian paths. My apologies. And truly, I believe that anybody in DC should be able to get to where they need to go without having to step foot in their car. Anybody should have the opportunity to go from Ward 8 to Ward 3 without having to step foot in the car. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And now Tricia Duncan.
So sometimes when people see these new projects that drastically change the landscape, like the bike lanes on Connecticut, the first response is sort of emotional, like it's going to be too much change. But as I've been talking to city planners, we are not the first city that this has happened to. There are so many roads in Ward 3 that are already choked with cars. In our neighborhood, it's Arizona, it's Foxhall. I know there's parts of Connecticut Avenue that are just choked with cars. And every single person on this panel is talking about more housing. So I think the idea is, if along our corridors, we get denser, we do multimodal forms of transportation, there's going to be a lot of new people moving into the city who don't need cars, don't want cars. The millennials who come in, they don't want cars. They want to live and go to restaurants and work and be close to transportation. So I think the parking issue is actually not as much of an issue. And by all accounts, bike lanes are good for small businesses. So I think these things, the urban planners will tell you that it's a positive all around.
Thank you very much. Those were all great answers. I'm going to throw this over to Spence for the next question.
You're muted, Spence.
0 for 2. Sorry, guys. This question comes from several members of several emails that I received, and sort of it's an amalgamation. Some claim that DC is not considered a serious stakeholder, and our concerns are not getting the attention of the Metropolitan Washington Airports Authority, the FAA, and Virginia and Maryland. And I think you guys know where I'm going with this question. What initiatives would you sponsor to reduce aircraft noise over Ward 3? And first up, Mr. Fruman, Matthew Fruman.
So for those out there, we got a heads up this afternoon of what the topics were. And I saw this one and I thought, boy, I hope I'm 6th on this one. And now you went ahead and took part of my answer, the part of the answer that I had. So I did the research on this to see what was going on here. And it is striking that there have been complaints about airplane noise. There was a case brought, an appeal made to the FAA to look at it. And the FAA found that the complaint was made too late. And so in effect, the statute of limitations had passed, and people complained that they hadn't gotten notice of a change that was done at the airports on time, and that's why it was later. But the idea that the government would say too late, you can't come to us to get a solution on this issue if the planes really are flying too late and flying too early, I mean, it's appalling, and it does point to statehood. We don't have the authority that we need to have. And if we were a state, we would at least have the muscle to try to push for a hearing on this issue, if not a solution. We didn't even get a hearing on it.
All right. Thank you. Eric Goulet.
Thank you. I live on the 5700 block of Sherry, and the planes do fly over my house, but where from I'm at, they're still pretty high in the sky. When they get further south, though, it becomes a problem. And I'd want to make sure that any airports authority nominee that came before the council was ready to sit down with the Ward 3 community and talk seriously about this issue, and was willing to take it seriously when they got on the airports authority board. So I think that would be the thing I would do on this issue. And since I have another 30 seconds, I want to just talk about, I think what we really need here is somebody in Ward 3 who's going to listen to our residents, like on this issue, and lead on it here on the council and be a champion for Ward 3 on the council. And I think I have the experience to do that. So I really appreciate this question. I'm looking forward to working with the Airports Authority on it.
Okay, thank you very much, Eric. And now over to Monte Monash.
Yes, thank you. So the solution really is, in our situation right now, the posture that the District of Columbia is in, is that we have to work with our appointees that are on the Metropolitan Washington Area Ports Authority. That's the voice that we have right now. We don't have the opportunity to do anything with the federal side. So statehood is linked with using our current appointees to be our voice. So fighting for statehood on this particular subject is pretty key. I also want to say that we've been fighting this battle for such a long time that we have to continue to organize and make sure that we have a representation with Eleanor Holmes Norton and our mayor, with their attention to make sure that we are actually getting action on this particular issue. It affects so many things in our area over the Palisades area. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Monash. And now it is Philip Thomas's time for a response.
Yes, when I was the Ward 3 liaison for the mayor, I worked on advocating to get funding through to DOE for airplane noise study. I will work with the NWA board to make sure flights are flying over the river or the water and not over our homes, especially over in Foxhall and the Palisades as well. Lastly, I will work with the Office of Regional and Federal Affairs to lobby Congress or the federal government so we can make changes, as well as we know that we need DC statehood. So I will try to do everything in my power, especially when the appointees come before the council, to make sure that they lobby for the district residents. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Phil. And now we move on to Ben Bergman.
Yeah, I mean, so this is an obvious quality of life issue. It's also one of these difficult balancing challenges. We need a thriving airport. We all benefit from that. We also need to make sure that certain neighborhoods aren't directly impacted and solely impacted by certain harms. Right now, that's happening because of the statehood issue. But that said, I agree with Eric. I think there are pressure points that we sometimes as a district don't use, or our leaders say, oh, we don't run a state. We have leverage with our partners in Virginia and Maryland. You see this in the parking ticket context. There are things we can do to push people that we don't do. That said, I think if you care about this issue, the single most important thing that we can do is take out our credit cards and donate to Raphael Warnock so that he can win re-election. We donate to Mark Kelly so he can win re-election, and make sure Democrats keep control of Congress, because statehood is a partisan issue. That's the reality, but it's also inevitable once Democrats take control of the Senate. It's not contingent on Joe Manchin, and that is the key thing for getting 2 senators, and that will help us address this issue in a real sustained way.
Okay, thank you very much, Ben. And Deirdre, over to you.
Thank you. As everyone says, statehood is an issue, and we will continue to fight on that issue and try and get statehood. But in the meantime, we still need to address this issue of the aircraft noise. And I think the most immediate ways we can do that is by making sure we know who we're appointing to the board. We need to make sure that we're working with our congresswomen We need to make sure the Attorney General, if there's any way that that office can put in some litigation to help push this lawsuit along. We have to all come together and work together to make sure that the residents of the District of Columbia and of course Ward 3 voices are being heard about this really important issue. We can't wait for statehood. We don't know when it's going to come. I have confidence that it will come one day. I may not be allowed to see it, but we need to work on these issues right now. And I think the best way is for us all to collaborate together as a District of Columbia residents. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Deirdre. And Henry Cohen, over to you.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of my opponents that this is most importantly a statehood issue. And it's an issue of, reclaiming our skies. I'm a big believer in statehood. I'm proud to say that I've been a lifelong Democrat, unlike some people here. I'm proud to be a member of the Democratic Party, which is long history supporting statehood. And I'm happy to say that, I've been a foot soldier in the Blue Wave committees, helping elect Democratic senators, presidents, representatives. And that's how we're going to solve this issue. We're going to solve this issue by knocking on doors in Pennsylvania, electing John Fetterman, calling voters in Wisconsin, electing Mandela Barnes, re-electing Mark Kelly, re-electing Raphael Warnock, because that's how we're going to get statehood, by supporting the Democratic Party, the party that actually cares about statehood and cares about DC. And that's how we're going to get this done. There's no good answer to this question without statehood. And statehood's going to happen when we all volunteer, when we all pitch in, and when we all get Democrats elected. It's as simple as that.
All right, Henry, much obliged for that intervention, and over to Patricia Duncan.
Thank you. I might have a little advantage here on my knowledge of this issue and what we're doing already. I'm going to give a shout out to the airplane committee from the PCA, headed up by Ken Buckley. There's a community working group that works on the airplane noise, and it includes Maryland and Virginia. And I have recently learned that Maryland and Virginia, with their community groups, actually bring government representatives with them, whereas DC has left us with just the community people who live along the river who are suffering the most. I used to live in Roslyn. Like, Virginia does get hit really hard with low planes there. It's really bad. But we do not use the power we already have to do this. Councilmember Che had put some money in the budget, and no one from DC has our back. There's something that we can do about this now from the government side, and I have a decent amount of knowledge on this issue. There's more that we can do to share the burden of the noise with Virginia and Maryland.
Very good. And Bo Finley?
Thank you. So with regards to statehood, yes, statehood is the long-term answer to a lot of things that affect us in the district. I started the Blue Wave Committee in the Ward 3 Democrats in 2016 after the devastating loss at the presidential election. We selected 7 candidates in Virginia to flip the Virginia State Legislature. We got 1 candidate short, and we won 6 out of 7. The next year, I took my model, or 2 years later, I took my model to the DC Democratic State Committee, where I was able to create a Blue Wave Committee there. Also in the 2020 primaries, was able to kick off the debate about statehood in a town hall hosted by CNN, where I asked Senator Sanders of Vermont why his constituents have 2 senators and a congressperson, and people in DC don't. But going back to the airplane noise, we've got the MWAA board, and a litmus test for appointing members to that should be noise affecting residents in Ward 3 and Ward 2. Finally, we also have the DCA Community Noise Working Group, which Tricia just mentioned. We need to appoint the Ward 3 council member to it, the Ward 2 council member to it, and I'll throw the next meeting's link into the chat so folks can participate in that meeting and make their demands heard with DCA and with FAA.
All right, well, I think that wraps up this question, and now I will turn it over to Mr. Gordon for, and I'm sure you're quite happy about this, the final question.
I know that we are running long. I took a look at the chat and the Q&A, and there were some great questions. I'd like to ask one final question that should require a very, very brief answer. And this comes out of the chat. Ward 3 does not have a senior wellness center. Would you support building one? And we'll start with Eric.
I mean, yes, absolutely would I support building a senior wellness center. And I think to be able to get that done, you need somebody who's had experience getting projects into the budget. As budget director for the city for 4 years, I'll be able to get a senior wellness center in the budget in fiscal year 2024 for our ward. So absolutely yes to that. And being somebody who's got that experience guarantees that it will get done with a council member who's done a great job delivering for projects for our ward stepping out now. So you need somebody who can fill her shoes, and I can do that from day one.
Thank you, Eric. Monty?
Yes, thank you. So we talked about the small area plan for Chevy Chase. The perfect place for something like this to go, and I do support having a senior center. The perfect place for this to go is the Chevy Chase Library Branch, above the Chevy Chase Library Branch, or on the campus of the rec center. I think it's a great opportunity for us to use that public land to solve a problem in a very succinct way. So I do believe that the possibility is there.
Thank you. Phil?
Yes, I do support a senior wellness center in Ward 3, someplace that's ADA accessible and Metro accessible as well. We have to look at using finding public space or public land to deliver it. We also need a council member who knows the community and knows how to get things done with a proven record. And I am that person who can deliver it and include it in the budget as well and deliver the project to Ward 3 seniors. And as it goes to my platform, 3 S's and an H, one of it is the seniors. And I'm going to do everything I can to bring a senior wellness center to Ward 3. Thank you.
Thank you. Ben Bergman?
Yep, I will join everybody else and say I support the Senior Wellness Center. I mean, what I would say, I think to echo what Monte said, we need to be aggressive about leveraging our public space to build more housing, but also to increase amenities. And that's why I've called for a master plan to redevelop all public buildings, with exceptions for historic properties or whatever other minor exceptions. But let's redevelop all public buildings, either now or at the end of their useful life, to include more housing, but also to include much needed amenities for the community, which in Ward 3 would definitely be a senior wellness center.
Thank you. Deirdre?
I'm in support of a senior wellness center as well. I have a short video on my website where I talk about it. And why it's important is because this can be a place where seniors can avoid isolation. They can see information about benefits they may be entitled to, like for real property benefits, as well as being able to age in place. The main thing though is we need to make sure that it's centrally located and convenient. And that means that it's where seniors can get to by public transportation. So we do need to look at developments that are already in the work, like Chevy Chase, Friendship Heights, Tinleytown, Cleveland Park, Willie Park, all of those neighborhoods where we're already talking about development. This would be great places to put in a permanent senior wellness center in the ward.
Thank you. Henry? With no irony.
It's not, yeah. Campaign's about youngest and the oldest and everyone in between. So with that, I'll say yes to Senior Wellness Center. We have a great resource with the Iona Senior Wellness Center, and I would be happy to partner with them to meet the community's needs. I'd support publicly funded, and yeah, I'm just a big supporter of Senior Wellness Center. It's not a very deep answer, but it's the one that we need.
Thank you. Tricia?
I'm going to sound like a broken record, but a senior wellness center would be a fantastic idea. I see what they do over in Arlington. My mother is a senior there, and they have programming for seniors that are in the early stages of memory loss. And I do think it is the job of a city to take care of our older residents. There's also a lot of programming that can be done even at our existing DPR facilities. But yes, I would definitely be supporting a facility that supports our seniors.
Thank you. Bo?
Thank you. So this is something that I started working on in 2020, and I think around April or May, and then later worked with Karen Zuckerstein, who's now acting chair of the Ward 3 Democrats, to pass resolutions across Ward 3 in support of a senior wellness center. And I had the privilege of helping draft the resolutions that passed a number of agencies, which was great, and working with the Department of Aging and Community Living. There's in the current budget, there appears to be about $500,000 set aside for a feasibility study. for a Ward 3 Senior Wellness Center, and I fully support a Ward 3 Senior Wellness Center that is accessible, metro accessible, bus accessible, and easy and safe to walk to. So yes, absolutely support one. Thank you.
Thank you. And Matt Fruman.
So there's a long list of things that I've worked on over the years and that illustrate that I get things done, and this is one of them. So I worked very closely with Sally White at Iona, and we got a pilot program put together so that we could do wellness programs in our libraries, in our rec centers, in our schools, in our churches. And that program, which eventually my wife runs, has been phenomenal and is used as a model around the city. We deliver more senior wellness programming through that program in places around the ward convenient to our seniors than other senior wellness centers do at all. Still, we need a senior wellness center. The place to put the senior wellness center, in my opinion, is at UDC. The Causes program has a program focused on senior health. It's right on top of a metro. There's a giant parking garage there. You can make it work there. I would be determined to get it done, just as Sally and I got it done to have the program, the pilot program implemented that's been such a success.
Well, thank you. Thank you all for those answers. I'm going to throw it back to Spence for the
final closing ceremonies.
Yay!
Guys. Yay! And in this, we have, of course, your closing statements. You have a minute. I want to, before it's sort of use my moderating prerogative, to also throw two issues at you guys. No comment required, but I thought they were very interesting questions that were asked. And number one is trying to get DC tags great again, and trying to get this really important tool for DC parents to access schools out of state fully funded and reformed. And that was, I thought that was a really good point. The second point is even more of a thought provoker, especially for you A and C folks, is one person really wanted to think about ways to increase the powers of the A and C with our city, which I think is actually worth thinking about as well. There, I took my time. We're going to go to closing statements, and Monty Monash, your final moment, your final thoughts.
Great, thank you so much. So thank you for organizing this forum. This was a great exchange of ideas, and it was good to hear everyone's full thoughts on where we are and what we're trying to do in this ward. I'm really running to focus on public safety, to support mayoral control over the schools, and to create a safe space for children to learn and thrive, to build housing that residents of all ages and income can afford, and also to make our economy more competitive. I also want to make sure that we are updating our transportation networks and our aging infrastructure to pay attention to that and not let that be something as an afterthought, only when something breaks. I also want us to make sure that we do our part to meet those 2032 clean energy goals. As been said, we have a councilwoman now who's been fighting for that tirelessly, and she's done a great job. We need to continue that legacy. Also, DC is a great place to live and do business. And on the other side of the pandemic, we want to make sure that Ward 3 has been reimagined with conveniences that are livable, walkable, convenient, and inclusive for all. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Monash. And now I turn it over to Philip Thomas for his valedictory thoughts.
Thank you, Spence. Thank you, Robert, for hosting today's forum. Thank you for all the people who tuned in, all 141 people. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to share my vision as the next Ward 3 council member. I always like to say that our campaign and going into Ward 3 Council, we like to focus on 3 S's and an H, and that is focus on seniors at a senior wellness center in Ward 3, as well as safety and drive down crime, as well as schools, as we got to relieve overcrowding, and I support mayor control as well. As people know, the quality of life in Ward 3 is great, and people move toward, families move to Ward 3 for the school system and for the community. I want to continue that as well. I'm going to continue working with the council and the mayor to relieve overcrowding in the schools, and then also affordable housing as well. As we know, we need more workforce housing as well as deep affordable housing in Ward 3. And I plan to deliver that on the council as the next Ward 3 council member. Thank you.
Thank you, Philip. And Ben Bergman, last thoughts.
Great. So when I started this campaign, there were two big things I talked about in terms of that are holding back families in the district: housing and childcare. And I've been consistent about that. I know so many people in my generation who do not live here because they cannot afford to send their children to daycare here because it is too expensive. It is outrageous. It is a huge problem for our future. And I think one of the things I'm proud of is I have an ambitious plan, a short-term plan and a long-term plan. Short-term, let's fully fund Birth to 3. Let's make that happen. Let's improve wages. But long-term, let's expand public education in the district to include the toddler and infant years. It used to not go to kindergarten. It used to not go to pre-K. We've done it before. That will be transformative. The thing one other thing I'll just leave you with, if you control F through everybody else's websites, there's only one other candidate in this race who talks about childcare. You cannot be a progressive candidate if you do not have a robust plan to address one of the major challenges facing families in the district, and that's childcare.
Thank you very much, Ben. And Deirdre, over to you, Ms. Brown.
Thank you. Just real quickly with DC Tag. I have two of my kids who have graduated now. They've graduated undergrad who use DC Tag for all 4 years of their education at state schools. And so I'm a full supporter of fully funding DC Tag, and we need to increase the amount because it does not fill a gap. Let me tell you that. But anyway, my two big issues, as you guys know, is education and housing. I've been a housing advocate for over 20 years. I think it's really important we have someone on the council who understands how housing works, how the industry works, has worked with the council on legislation to get some of these major bills concerning TOPA and rent control and Airbnb passed, and also we have many future issues that are going to be coming up regarding housing. Secondly, as a parent of kids who are in school and have graduated, I understand what parents are going through in this day and age of educating their kids, but also then helping them to come back into the community and hopefully be able to live and work where they grew up. Thank you.
Thank you, Deirdre. And Henry, your last thoughts.
Yeah, I want to take this moment to address education, which has been my #1 issue and will continue to be my #1 issue. A lot of the candidates here and a lot of politicians across DC claim to be listening to the students about what's important to them. But when the students send me to this debate to talk about how important it is we do things like end mayoral control, end school corporatization, ensure that we're probably supporting our teachers, people just put their head in the sand. People talk about how we need to ensure we maintain mayoral control. People talk about how, oh, the mayor's doing such a good job. People need to start listening to what's actually important to us. People need to start listening to what's actually important for students instead of just trying to use us for cheap political points. And second, I want to say that education, it may be my #1 issue. It's not my only issue. I want to talk about transportation. Transportation is something that affects everybody in DC. It's something that we cannot afford to ignore. DC needs to become a national leader in public transportation. DC needs to become a national leader in bus service, metro service, bike service, pedestrian service, every kind of transportation that you can imagine that's not cars. And we can build a greener future by doing that. And lastly,
time's up, Henry. Sorry. Anyway, okay, moving right along. Tricia Duncan.
Thank you. This has been a wonderful forum. I am running for Ward 3 Council to serve Ward 3 constituents. Constituent services is going to be a big part of the job, and it is likely going to be my favorite part of the job. I love micro issues. I love talking to people about what is important to them and helping them navigate the city and do all that. And that's really why I'm running, is to serve the residents of Ward 3. I do see us increasing population all over the city in the coming decade, and we're going to see some big changes. And I think I have a proven track record of helping people move along with those changes and make sure that our neighborhoods are as vibrant, as strong as they've always been. If you'd like to go see my website, Tricia for ward3.com. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Duncan. And now, Bo Finley, final thoughts.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Robert, Spence, and Ann. Ann, your color-coded timekeeping has been wonderful. I got into this race because we're at a crossroads in the city. As I mentioned earlier, this campaign is based on human dignity. And we see housing as an issue, we see the environment as an issue, we see our schools as an issue, and all these issues are interrelated. We have the opportunity in this election to show that we truly want the district to be a place of inclusiveness, of justice, and equity. We need somebody with long-term vision to address our long-term problems and the understanding that no one person is an expert on everything. We need a leader who's demonstrated not just that they're progressive with their words, but with their actions. And I have that track record to back it up. I fought hard for labor rights as a union leader. I fought hard for affordable housing and Ward 3 shelter for families as an ANC. I fought for climate justice. And on council, I'll fight for a more inclusive, more equitable, more just DC. To volunteer for this campaign of dignity and justice, please visit my website, bofinley.com, and sign up. We've got a small army of volunteers knocking doors, hosting meet and greets, and spreading the word. So please join us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bo and Matt Fruman.
So first, 100% for fully funding DC Tag. Deirdre, I'll match your impressive 2 DC Tag students with my 3 DCPS grads who all got DC Tag and really helped us. And it's the kind of thing that keeps families in the city. In this forum, you've heard about a lot of change that's coming, and it's really great. It's really exciting, but it's sometimes scary also. And I have worked for years on issue after issue, working closely with people on both sides of the issue to try to forge a consensus to get important things done, whether it's at Lisner, whether it's a park that there was a compromise in order to get the lights up, whether it's the AU campus plan, whether it's the Friendship Animal Hospital. Time after time, I've worked with people to find solutions. Part of the way I'm going to do that when I'm on the city council goes to your question about empowering ANCs. I'm going to meet with ANCs once a month to make sure that I understand what the issues are on the front lines so that I can work together with them to solve problems.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Matt. And Eric Goulet gets the very last word, except for me, of course.
Thank you. Last in and then last out to close it out here. Thank you for the host here. I really appreciate this and appreciate being able to participate on my phone. You know, from the beginning of this campaign, I've really been a good listener, listening to about what their concerns are. And what I want to impress upon you is I've heard you. I want to bring my demonstrated experience to work for you. I'm the only candidate in this race that has a history of delivering big projects in DC government. As part of a team, I was able to fund the first School Modernization Act. I was able to work with Chief Kathy Lanier to bring 4,000 police officers to the city. I was able to work during the recession to fund the Pre-K 3 and 4 Act with universal pre-K for our students. I was able to write the Birth to 3 Act to bring eventually universal childcare so that no family has to pay more than 10% of their income on childcare. And I will deliver big projects for Ward 3, fully funding DC Tag, funding the public safety that Ward 3 residents have demanded, providing oversight of our voucher program, providing and reducing school overcrowding in our schools by building new schools and guaranteeing that we can bring 3 and 4-year-olds in our pre-K program into our Ward 3 neighborhood schools by taking a hard look and a data-driven look at our boundary system. I'm going to fight for you here in Ward 3 on the council.
Thank you very much, Eric. And with that, we conclude the Chevy Chase Palisades Community Association Forum. I want you to know that we had about 140 people here for this most of the time. I would treat that as a good thing. If people want to see a tape of this, it will be posted. This tape, I date myself. There's going to be a link on the website of the PCA. We'll be sending it out on the listserv as well for those who want to see it. And I'm sure Chevy Chase is going to do much the same thing. Yes, Robert is nodding. Excellent. So I thank all of the candidates for their patience with us, your patience with Zoom, and your patience with what is a long and hard slog of a campaign. So thank you so much, you guys. It was a tremendous experience, and I think we've informed a lot of voters this way. Thanks a lot. Meeting adjourned.
Thank you, Spence. Thank you, Robert.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Spence. Thank you, Robert, as well. Thank you, Ann, as well.
Yes.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
Yeah, and thanks to the timekeeper with the amazing color-coded
Yes,
cards.
thank you.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
Good luck, everyone.
Great job.
You can do it.